Hi students. Small intestine is a main organ of digestion. The digestion is completed, and small intestine is also the main organ of absorption. And the small intestine contains the finger-shaped structures called as villi, which are lined by the columnar epithelial cells, isn't it? So the end products of carbohydrate digestion are: one is glucose, fructose, and galactose. These are the end products of carbohydrate digestion. The end products of protein digestion are amino acids. The end products of fat digestion are fatty acids and glycerol. So these end products must be absorbed into the blood now. That's called as absorption. In the previous lecture, we have already discussed what are the various different mechanisms by which this absorption takes place. Now, what is the precise mechanism by which these particles are utilizing these various transport mechanisms to get absorbed into the blood? That is the present lecture now. Okay, students. So, glucose and galactose and also amino acids. These are the end products of carbohydrate digestion, whereas the amino acids are the end products of protein digestion. So all these structures are transported here by the secondary active transport to the intestinal mucosal epithelial cells. Intestinal mucosal epithelial cells lining the villi. Mucosal epithelial cells here means here the columnar epithelial cells present in the intestinal mucosa, and they line the villi, isn't it? And glucose, galactose, and amino acids are transported to the villi, that is mucosal epithelial cells, by secondary active transport mechanism. From there, from the villi, that is columnar epithelial cells, they are absorbed into the blood by the facilitated diffusion. Here. That is the first point. The second point is other end product of carbohydrate digestion here called as fructose is transported into the intestinal mucosal epithelial cells lining the villi again through the facilitated diffusion. From here to these villi cells, they are absorbed into the blood by facilitated diffusion here. So from the blood, the glucose, particles, galactose, etc. are moving inside the cells by which one? Facilitated diffusion. Why? Because I told you that these cannot be transported. For example, glucose cannot be absorbed into the cells. It is there, isn't it? By the simple diffusion. It cannot be absorbed into the cells by simple diffusion. The glucose can be absorbed into the cells only by the facilitated diffusion and utilizing the transmembrane proteins, isn't it? And here also into the cells by facilitated diffusion here. Okay, what's remaining now? The vitamins here. Vitamins. There is no need of any digestion in the case of vitamins. They are the accessory foodstuffs. They are absorbed into the blood directly. For example, you take vitamin B12, cyanocobalamin. What is required here? Caseous intrinsic factor present in the gastric juice is necessary for the absorption of the vitamin B12. Absorption of vitamin B12. What is required? Caseous intrinsic factor, and this factor is present in the gastric juice of the stomach. So vitamins finished. Next one is the water. Water is transported by osmosis. Basing on the osmotic gradient. So what is remaining now? What is remaining? The thing remaining is the end products of fat digestion. What is that? Fatty acids and glycerol. What happens with these fatty acids and glycerol? Let's discuss now. So the end products of fat digestion are fatty acids and glycerol. These are of two different types. One is a short chain fatty acids and glycerol, and longer chain fatty acids and glycerol. The short chain fatty acids and glycerol, they are directly absorbed into the blood. Absorbed into the blood. As you know, the blood consists of blood plasma. The blood plasma contains 92% water. But these short chain fatty acids and glycerol are directly soluble in the water because they are of short chain. And 92% of blood plasma consists of water, and even then the short chain fatty acids can be absorbed into the blood because they are short chain fatty acids. But here you take the long chain fatty acids, they cannot be directly absorbed into the blood because these are water insoluble. Water insoluble, whereas these are water soluble of the blood, isn't it? These are water insoluble, but these should be getting absorbed into the blood. So there is a special mechanism by which the long chain fatty acids are entering the blood circulation. What is that mechanism? Let's discuss now. What is the precise mechanism by which the long chain fatty acids and glycerol are absorbed into the main blood circulation? That is the present discussion here. Okay. So the long chain fatty acids and glycerol, because they are water insoluble, they are entering first of all into the intestinal epithelial cells of the villi. Intestinal epithelial cells of villi, columnar epithelial cells. In the villi, they get converted into the chylomicrons. So long chain fatty acids and glycerol, because they are water insoluble, they are not soluble in water. Hence, they first of all they enter into the intestinal epithelial cells of villi, columnar epithelial cells. Inside the columnar epithelial cells, these get converted into the special particles called as chylomicrons. What is a chylomicron? The chylomicron is a fat globule. Actually, it's a fat globule. This is a fat globule around which there is a protein coat is present here. Protein coat. And this is a fat globule. Globular in shape, that's why fat globule, around which there is a protein coat. That's what is a chylomicron. So first of all, the long chain fatty acids are converted into the smaller pieces here called as micelles. For example, these are long chain fatty acids and glycerol. They are converted into which one? Smaller particles called as micelles. Then the micelles, because they are smaller, they enter into the intestinal epithelial cells of the villi. Inside the intestinal epithelial cells, they get converted into which one? Chylomicrons. Each chylomicron is a fat globule around which there is a protein coat. That's what I said, chylomicron. Once they are forming into the chylomicron, because they are present inside the cell now. For example, this is a cell, columnar epithelial cell. So this chylomicron is present inside the cell. This chylomicron now comes outside the cell. What is this coming out of the cell is called as exocytosis. What is exocytosis? When any particle exits from the cell outside is called as exocytosis. Exo means outside. They are coming outside the cells. Which one? Chylomicrons are exiting out of the cells, columnar epithelial cells, by exocytosis. Exocytosis. And now they enter into the lacteals. What is a lacteal? Lacteal means the lymph capillary of the intestinal villi. Lymph capillary of intestinal villi. Intestinal villi, finger-shaped structure, inside which there is a capillary, lymph capillary, that's called as a lacteal. Very large lymph capillary of the intestinal villi is called as a lacteal. That is, the chylomicrons, they exit out of the columnar epithelial cells, they come outside the epithelial cells, then they enter the lacteal. The lymph capillary of the intestinal villi is called as the lacteal now. So the lacteals, in this way, the chylomicrons are entering the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system comprises the lymph capillaries, lymph vessels, lymphatic ducts, and of course the lymph. So this enters the lymphatic system because they are entering the lacteals. From the lacteals, because it enters the lymphatic system, it is carried by the thoracic duct. It is carried by the thoracic duct. What is a thoracic duct? It is a largest lymphatic duct of the human body is the thoracic duct. The thoracic duct is the largest lymphatic duct of the human body. So to the lacteals, because it's a lymph capillary. So this through the lymph capillaries, they enter, the chylomicrons enter the thoracic duct. This is the lymphatic duct. And the lymph is carried by the beating of the smooth muscles. Peristalsis occur. As a result, it is moving upward towards the neck region. And from the thoracic duct, the lacteals, the thoracic duct, these chylomicrons are carried to the left subclavian vein. Left subclavian vein. It's a part of the veins, the venous system. So in this way, the chylomicrons are entering which one? Venous system. Meanwhile, what happens? The chylomicrons, because it is a fat globule and with a protein core, that's why this is broken by the enzyme called as lipoprotein lipase. Lipoprotein lipase enzyme breaks down this chylomicron into the pieces here. Okay. And as a result, from the subclavian vein, after the digestion of the lipoprotein lipase enzyme, it is converted into the smaller pieces now. Now these are entering which one? Venous system. And now they enter the general blood circulation. General blood circulation. To the venous system, it enters the heart. Okay, because it is entering which part of the heart? The left atrium. The left atrium of the heart. Because it is carried by the left subclavian vein. It's a part of the venous system now. And these veins carry the deoxygenated blood to which one? Here, this is the right atrium, isn't it? This is the right atrium. This is the left atrium. So, through the venous system, these are entering here into the right atrium. From there, it is entering the general blood circulation. And now, it is converted. It is to the general blood circulation. It is reaching the liver and the adipose tissue. Liver and adipose tissue. Adipose tissue contains the adipocytes. The fat storing cells are called as the adipocytes or adipose cells. So in the liver and adipose tissue, which consists of adipocytes, the fat is stored as the neutral fat. Neutral fat here. In this way, the fatty acids and glycerol of the longer chain also are getting absorbed into the general blood circulation and finally reaching the adipose tissue and liver where the fat is stored as the neutral fat. Neutral fat here. So that's the absorption of the fatty acids and glycerol. Now, how the absorption occurs in different parts of the How the absorption occurs in different parts and different organs of the digestive system. First of all, mouth. Minimum absorptive activity occurs here. Of course, chemical and mechanical digestion occurs here, but minimum absorptive facility is there in the mouth. under the tongue and mucosa lining of the mouth. One is under the tongue, where some of the drugs get absorbed, and mucosa lining, some drugs get absorbed here. That is, minimum absorption occurs in the mouth, where certain drugs are absorbed under the tongue and mucosa lining, because both of them having the capillaries here. Capillaries. To these capillaries, blood capillaries, these drugs get absorbed in the mouth. That is one. Number two is stomach. The stomach epithelium also absorbs some of the drugs, water and electrolytes. Electrolytes are absorbed in the stomach. Drugs, water and electrolytes are absorbed in the stomach. Next one is small intestine. Maximum absorption occurs because it contains the intestinal villi, microvilli, and that's why maximum absorption occurs in the small intestine. And also consists of duodenum is a main organ of digestion, of course. Next one is jejunum and ileum. Jejunum and ileum. Here the maximum absorption occurs in the jejunum and ileum. Next one is large intestine. Large intestine. Some of the absorption and reabsorption occurs in the large intestine. Example, take cecum and colon, and to some extent rectum also. Some of the reabsorption and absorption and reabsorption occurs in the large intestine. For example, the water, principally water is reabsorbed, drugs are reabsorbed, and electrolytes required for the body are also reabsorbed in the large intestine. The large intestine consists of cecum, colon and rectum here. Okay. So after absorption into the blood, these food particles are carried to the cells. Okay, in the cells the metabolism occurs here and assimilated into the tissue. That is why here assimilation occurs here. Assimilation. The process of converting this one into the protoplasm here, and the metabolism various for carrying or pursuit of the various metabolic activities, and that's what is the assimilation. After absorption, assimilation into the tissues. So next one is some of the undigested food particles are formed in the small intestine. Undigested food particles are formed in the small intestine. So here the esophagus, stomach, and then duodenum. Here starts. This is the esophagus. Here stomach. Here duodenum. The first part of the small intestine. Next one followed by here jejunum and ileum here, isn't it? So in the jejunum and ileum, the maximum absorption occurs. It is followed by the large intestine. The large intestine. The large intestine is comprised by cecum, colon and rectum. So here is a very small part. Here what is the cecum. Here is a vermiform appendix. This is the cecum. Ascending colon, transverse colon and descending colon. And here is the rectum. So some of the undigested food particles are passing to the cecum. And once the undigested food particles are passing to the cecum, there is a valve, what is ileocecal valve is present here. So this valve prevents the backward flow of these undigested food particles from cecum back into the ileum. So where are these undigested food particles now? Cecum. In the cecum, some of the absorption occurs. For example, water is reabsorbed, drugs and electrolytes are reabsorbed here into the cecum. So still some undigested food particles are passed here. Chiefly it consists of the roughage. What is the roughage? It is a fiber chiefly of the plant source. The fiber of the plant source is called as roughage, which cannot be digested. So the roughage is carrying these undigested food particles here. Undigested food particles principally carried by the roughage consists of this fiber of the plant source. Okay, and meanwhile what happens, it is entering the part here. Which part of the large intestine? First of all, ascending colon. This is the first part, second part and third part, isn't it? So the undigested food particles are present in the ascending colon. Meanwhile, large amounts of mucus is secreted here. Mucus, here also mucus, here also mucus. Because the undigested food particles must be glued together, adhered together, sticking together, isn't it? And that's why the large amounts of mucus is now secreted, and this is principally carried forward by the roughage. It is dragged here. And how this movement occurs? I told you in the previous session that tinea coli, the smooth muscle bands are present. Longitudinal smooth muscle bands are present. Tinea coli. Tinea coli. The tinea coli are nothing but longitudinal bands of smooth muscles present in the colon. They bring us rhythmic contractions and relaxations here. Here nothing but peristalsis. Because of the peristalsis only, these undigested food particles held together by the mucus and driven together by the roughage here. And here bulged output is called as haustra here, isn't it? As a result, these undigested food particles now slowly gets solidified. The undigested food particles now slowly gets solidified here. Meanwhile, what happens? Even from these undigested food particles, the water is squeezed out. The water, because man is a terrestrial animal, so conservation of water is crucial here. That is why the water is reabsorbed even in the colon, isn't it? So colon, here maximum absorption, reabsorption occurs even of the electrolytes and other essential particles, and now it is entering the rectum. The last part of the large intestine, it is very shorter but crucial part, because once the undigested food particles are reaching the rectum, it gets solidified here, and now is called as the fecal matter. Fecal matter or feces. Fecal matter. Even here, some of the water can be absorbed here, but minimum absorption because it's almost solidified now. So where is the fecal matter now? It is present in the rectum. Now it occurs the bowel movements, and there is an urge for removal of this fecal matter, and that is done by the neural reflex. Neural reflex causes the urge for removal of this fecal matter. So there is a mass peristalsis occur. Mass peristalsis occur by the rhythmic contractions, relaxations of the smooth muscles present in the rectum. As a result, this is the rectum, for example, is carried by the forward by the which one? The small here, anus is present. This is the anus, and here is the anal canal. Anal canal. This is the rectum, anal canal, anus. So this here is a fecal matter. It should be going out into the anus outside, but that is passed to the anal canal. And this anal canal here is lined internally by muscles here, smooth muscles here. Smooth muscles or involuntary muscles, and outside by the voluntary muscles, striated muscles. So this anal canal is lined internally by smooth muscles and externally by the voluntary muscles here. And because of this one, this process called as defecation is a voluntary process. Defecation is a voluntary process because the anal canal is lined by the voluntary muscles outside. Defecation is a voluntary process. So this removal, elimination of the fecal matter from the rectum to the anal canal and anus outside passage is called as the defecation. Clear, bachon? I told you that bile pigments, one of the bile pigment is bilirubin, formed in the liver, isn't it? From liver, it is carried to the intestine. In the intestine, bilirubin is converted into two components. One is the stercobilinogen and urobilinogen. The urobilinogen is carried via blood to the kidneys. where it is converted as kidneys filter this urobilinogen into the pigment called as urochrome, and urochrome is released outside to the urine. This process here called as micturition. The process of release of urine is called as micturition. During the micturition, the urochrome is sent outside to the urine here. Okay, next one is stercobilinogen, which is formed in the intestine. It is converted into the stercobilin. Stercobilin. The stercobilin is sent out to the fecal matter. Fecal matter. Because of stercobilin only, the fecal matter is having some yellowish brown appearance. Yellowish brown appearance of the fecal matter is because of the stercobilin. So here the bile pigment here called as bilirubin, which is formed in the liver through the bile juice. It is reaching the intestine. In the intestine, the bilirubin is converted into two pigments. One is a stercobilinogen, other is a urobilinogen. In this one, the urobilinogen through the blood reaches the kidneys. The kidneys filter the urobilinogen and convert into the urochrome. Urochrome is released to the urine through the micturition. Next one is intestine also consists of the stercobilinogen. The stercobilinogen is converted into which one? Stercobilin. And stercobilin is released outside to the during the defecation to the fecal matter, and the fecal matter is having the yellowish brown color is because of the stercobilin here. Okay, what's all of you? That's all for today. In the next session, we'll be discussing the disorders of digestive system. Okay, bye, friends.